From the carnivals in France to selling out Madison Square Garden, creating multiple movie stars, and inducting Donald Trump into the WWE Hall of Fame,
What?
the history of professional wrestling is so insane that I can sometimes barely believe that it's the only thing that isn't scripted in this wacky world. Well, that and adding color, but boy oh boy are we gonna get into that in a minute. So without further ado, this is the insane history of professional wrestling. Wrestling as a sport is said to have first been depicted as cave paintings in early ancient times, which I'm a bit skeptical about because we have cave paintings of Romans doing the Segao, and well, maybe it was just some dudes waving at each other ready to do the greatest tap-up of all time. So for all we know, these wrestling paintings might just well be the earliest depictions of men trying to figure out how to hug each other. We can, however, confirm that wrestling has been a sport since the earliest conception of the Olympics. But little did those pre-pubescent gladiators know that their beloved sport would turn into what we know today. Which brings me to our next section. So in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, the first waves of what we call today professional wrestling began to emerge in French carnivals. And because of that, we ended up getting like these cool terms and jargons that are still being used by the industry today. Terms like kayfabe, which is the act of presenting the matches and the whole spectacle of wrestling as real. Lying. It's basically lying to the audience. Kayfabe has been seen as the sacred and holy veil of the business of professional wrestling, which cannot be broken. Like, if wrestlings were feuding, they were supposed to keep up the idea that they actually hate each other in real life. Like, you know Rey Mysterio? Yeah, in storyline, him and his son are feuding, so you wouldn't even see them speak to each other IRL, to the point where like Dominic, his son, walked out of the building in the middle of Rey Mysterio's induction into the Hall of Fame. It's like a telenovela for men and I love it. Other cool terms include a shoot, which is when a wrestler goes off script. But sometimes a shoot isn't actually a shoot and they just pretend it's one to get you invested, and in that case it's called work. And if you don't want to get like worked into a shoot or something like that, pull up the Hulk Hogan meme.
This is not a work, okay? This is a shoot.
Carnivals would also do open challenges where any normal little person could pull up to the ring and see if they can last a few minutes with an actual wrestler. This was all fun and games until people started finding out that matches are scripted, which was pretty bad back then because people were betting like actual big lump sums of money on these matches. But then the three godfathers of wrestling, known as the Goldust Trio,
No, not that Goldust,
came together and formed the core foundation for the wrestling we know today. So after the whole world figured out that wrestling is scripted, bookers, which are people who write the storylines that drive wrestling promotions being the term used for wrestling companies, yes, these are a lot of terms, but you have to write each and every one of them down because it's going to be all in the test, started doing away with hour-long grappling matches mimicking actual Greco-Roman wrestling. If you want to watch that stuff, go watch the Olympics, okay, or like college matches. No. Around here, we throw punches and kicks and do suplexes and do backflips over the top rope. This style of wrestling became known as slammy wrestling. These wrestling matches, unlike the wrestling matches of the Olympics, featured two other concepts known as the babyface and the heel. The babyface is the good guy, and sometimes someone can be such a stereotypically say your prayers good guy that they become what is known as a white meat babyface, which is an insane term, might I just add, whereas the heel is known as the bad guy. The babyface's job is to get a pop, which is a positive reaction, and the heel's job is to get heat, which is a negative reaction. In fact, one of the earliest examples of a heel is Gorgeous George, a man who was known for his flamboyant gimmick. It was so extravagant to the point where there would be a woman who accompanied him to the ring just to spray the ring with perfume before each of his matches, which is just the most pro wrestling thing I've heard, and I love it. He is also considered by most people to be the first person to introduce the concept of gimmicks to wrestling. A gimmick is essentially the character of a wrestler, and a gimmick can be very important as this can determine whether or not a wrestler gets over. This all brings us to one of the most important times in wrestling. With Slammy Wrestling, now officially known as Pro Wrestling, finally taking over the United States of America, different wrestling promotions across the nation started to pop up, each promotion governing a certain territory. These territories were all governed by the National Wrestling Alliance, a word-of-mouth alliance between all the promotions which agreed upon a single world champion. This ensured that every promotion has their own little area to promote their wrestlers, showcase matches, and made sure that everyone could equally share in this amazing business, and everyone lived happily ever after. Then this guy was born. Vince McMahon Jr. bought the WWF from his dad and his partners for approximately $1 million. Now, Vince McMahon Sr. thought he taught his son correctly and that he will respect the NWA and will do his best to grow the territories, but the guy took over the country. Vince McMahon saw the potential that the WWF had and decided to just say screw the NWA and started touring the nation, putting on wrestling shows inside other territories, something that the company still does to this day. Long after the abolishment of the territories, he started making massive signings such as the legendary Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, and so much more. Vince McMahon even went as far as to start the biggest wrestling showcase on the planet, WrestleMania, which even to this day is seen as the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. It's utter insanity. He saw the potential for television and started broadcasting weekly. What would become known as Monday Night Raw is still the longest ongoing weekly TV series in the history of television, to the point where even now it's on Netflix. Vince McMahon single-handedly started forming a monopoly on wrestling within the United States. This led to other wrestling promotions popping up and started to compete for supremacy over professional wrestling. Promotions such as World Championship Wrestling, more commonly known as WCW, started their own weekly TV show called Monday Night Nitro, competing with Monday Night Raw, buying wrestlers from the WWF, which would become known as the WWE later after losing the copyright battle because that happened for some reason. Nitro started getting higher ratings than Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, that's right, he used to be in the WWE, became so popular that they took back the ratings, and this whole event became known as the Monday Night Wars within wrestling circles. It was the most competitive professional wrestling ever felt. And then Vince bought the WCW.
Damn it, Vince! You can't keep doing this!
Okay, so Vince had a problem. Vince was at the point now where he no longer cared about his father's vision for wrestling and wanted to take over wrestling, to the point where you would hear the word wrestling and the only thing you think about is WWE. And to a certain extent, in an international sense at least, he was pretty close to achieving that. The story of ECW is essentially infamous with financial problems and WWE buying ECW, merging it with WWE, and then reviving it briefly just for it to disappear again. And for the longest time, Vince McMahon was on a high-speed course to taking over the world of professional wrestling. Until the documentary. So Vince McMahon had to resign as CEO of WWE due to some scandals and stuff. Just go watch the documentary. He's actually just a horrible person. Like, it's genuinely just a good thing that he's out of the company now and out of the world of professional wrestling. We acknowledge what he's done for the history, but we're glad that he's gone now. His daughter is now co-CEO of the WWE alongside billionaire mogul Nick Khan. His son-in-law Triple H is now the head of creative, and genuinely wrestling hasn't been this healthy in a long while. Triple H is now working alongside with other wrestling promotions like TNA, MLW, Pro Wrestling Noah, etc. He's actively feeding competition and not just seeking monopoly. He's literally working with other promotions across the planet. AEW is considered an actual rival promotion to the WWE, pushing other companies to try their best week in and week out to create the best product possible. The last time wrestling was this healthy was during the days of the territories. AEW is sister promotions with New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and even CMLL in Mexico. Wrestling is as big as it has ever been, and with AEW AEW now being on HBO Max, WWE being on Netflix, WWE and the UFC being sister companies being owned both by the parent company TKO. The audience is gonna get even bigger and bigger each and every single day.
Editing learning here. So I take back everything I said. WWE just bought AAA. Right?
Wrestling, from its humble beginnings in French carnivals to one of the biggest forms of entertainment. Its story is insane and wacky and is still going on, and as long as there are people to be entertained, it probably won't ever stop finding its way in front of people's eyes. And that is the wacky origin of professional wrestling.